Good morning, my name is Ola Atamanova, and it's my pleasure to see everybody who joins us in Ukrainian Media Center Ukraine Forum. Today is day 671 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. It's been 10 years of the war, and today we will be talking about the crimes of the Russians committed against our children. Human rights group has made a study about the movement of Ukrainian children to Russian territory, and in yet another suit of theirs to the International Criminal Court, they insist that the crime should be requalified as genocide rather than a war crime. So today we will be talking to Mykola Komarovskyi, lawyer of the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group. Good morning, Mr. Mykola. Good morning, all. So, Mr. Mykola, what have you been able to study? What is the unique nature of this document that you've prepared for the International Criminal Court, and what are the consequences that such submission may have? Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to present the results of our work. It's important to research this problem, to study it, but it's also important to keep talking about it because we should keep everybody aware of these problems because it's quite a complicated thing. So talking about our suit, first of all, we have to recognize that our goal is, as you properly mentioned, is to convince the Prosecutor General to requalify the existing proceeding to crime of genocide rather than the war crime. So our suit and our report is not the first one of its nature. In reality, back in the year 2022, different human rights organizations were drawing attention to this problem, but I have to emphasize a number of aspects here. First of all, other organizations were viewing this crime not as genocide only. We will be able to discuss it in better detail, I hope, but it's clear that the crimes committed by Russia against Ukrainian children, this crime can be qualified as a crime against humanity, as a war crime, and as a crime of genocide as well. So the main goal of the previous information reports to ICC was to provide information about what's going on without the touching upon the matter of qualification of this suit. And secondly, many of such reports were of communications nature. So there was an information collected that was describing the deportation of abduction and deportation of Ukrainian children, and then the matter of requalification was never touched upon. And talking about the third aspect that I would like to emphasize, which is not least important, that in fact is the first one, at least among those ones that I'm aware of. The first report to ICC, which has such a complex nature that contains not only the actual part of it, but also contains quite a fundamental part dedicated to the reasoning to the crime of genocide. So it's quite a complicated category of crime. It's quite difficult to prove it. We understand that probably the best lawyers of the world work in International Criminal Court, but since it's a very disputable issue, we wanted to unite both theoretical and practical components. So in this format, this is the first report of this nature that we may state about. Mr. Mykola, so what were the facts that you were able to add to complement, to complete this puzzle, to make sure that now we may say that it's a genocide going on rather than a war crime? Well, talking about the evidences, I need to say that this crime is still in progress. It's not yet over. The full-scale aggression is going on, and the crime is unfortunately going on too. So talking about the reference point when we may say that there is a substantial reason to view it as genocide. In my opinion, such reference point can be the adoption by Putin of an order approved in May 2022, which contemplated the extension of Russian citizenship to Ukrainian children, and this is a reference point already. So the report was published and submitted by us just recently. It was submitted on the 22nd of November 2023, but all the information collected only confirms our position that this crime is a crime of genocide. But talking about the reference point is the order of Putin dating back May 2022. So in your report, could you mention what was the number of children who were abducted and deported by Russia? Well, first of all, we rely upon the data provided by the Ukrainian government. We have Children of War portal, which is based on the activity of the Commissioner for the Human Rights. And here we're talking about more than 19,000 Ukrainian children who were abducted and transported to the territory of Russian Federation. But this question is one of the most frequently asked ones. But again, this issue is quite complicated because calculating even the approximate number is an onerous task, because one group of children, when basically they can be divided conditionally in two groups. So one group of children are the children who were deported from occupied territories and which became deoccupied later on. But another substantial, in terms of its number of children, is the group of children who were living in the territories of previously occupied Donetsk and Luhansk region, which were occupied for a long time. The foster homes were active there for a long time, and it's very difficult to calculate the number of children who were there because there were no control and registration of them in those territories. So we can only assume here. Again, it's quite difficult to answer this question, and we rely upon the information provided by the Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights. But in fact, we may say that the actual number is bigger, and it's about to increase. So 19,546 children is a minimum number, but in fact such number is way bigger. Mr. Pavlov, we know about all those terrible cases when our children get adopted on the level of top-level government officials of Russian Federation. They have their names changed, their last names changed, and even their place of birth. We know such case with Deputy Mironov and other cases with Maria Lvova Belova, who is quite a bright instance of such crimes here. So are such cases included in your report, and how are they being viewed? Because we understand that the position of top-level government officials who influence and make decisions in the aggressor country is quite an important position. Well, of course, they are being taken into account. Even there are specific articles dedicated to coverage of such cases. And if you look through our report, it's already available online. We have an objective site about the facts and the description, collection of data, and then another part is reasoning of the aspects of the crime of genocide. So specifically those cases. That case was the first one, the adoption by the Commissioner for Human Rights of Russian Federation, Maria Lvova Belova, of a boy named Philip, who was a resident of Mariupol. Well, in fact, she adopted him. That category, it requires better detailization, but the child really resides with her family. She educates him. The child was extended a Russian citizenship. And in the context of the fact that it's a media person, a top-level government official who uses media platforms to promote her activity, it's a very serious proof of effect of genocide and advertising of such activities. And of course, if such government official adopts a Ukrainian child, they aspire for other people to copy her attitude and behavior and become a part of such process. So yeah, it's a very serious proof which is included in our report, which allows us to prove other legal constructs to prove that the crime of genocide is taking place. So let's talk about the consequences. First of all, how long the review of your report may take, and in case ICC supports it and they do state that it's a crime of genocide, what can be the consequences for the aggressor country? Well, talking about the preceding part, how long it may take, at the moment they're at the stage of the Prosecutor General Office review. It's like our Ukrainian pre-court investigation. But unfortunately, this process is not fast. It may take years, and we have to take into account the political component here. So many things will depend on the way the events unfold with the war in Ukraine. And talking about the consequences, the recognition of crime as crime of genocide will have a substantial meaning, because talking about war crimes, it's a horrific crime, but comparing a war crime to a crime of genocide is not of such a grand nature. So again, it will be of information importance for the whole world, because when we say that children are not just being transported and it's a war crime, but they are being deported with a specific purpose, and such purpose is the eradication of Ukrainian state. So it has already a different perspective. But again, a key thing that we want to believe, and the key consequence that we want to see, is to have all the perpetrators brought to liability. So I have no doubt this matter will be solved, that this decision was taken by the top level government officials within the framework of the policy of eradication of Ukrainian national group, and bringing those people to liability is our main goal. It's difficult. It depends on a number of aspects. First of all, on the development of the war conditions in Ukraine. So in that case, we will be able to bring to liability not only Putin, for whom the arrest warrant is already issued, but all other people involved in this crime. Do I formally articulate it correct? Well, I have to disagree with you a little bit, because again, if we talk about the review by the International Criminal Court, the arrest warrant was already issued, but the person is not being brought to liability so far. It's only issued to make sure that a person may be delivered to the courts, so the case in their relation may be reviewed. So again, it's just the first stage to have a person delivered to the court, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are in charge of that crime. And that's the first thing. And secondly, the goal of International Criminal Court is to bring all those top-level government officials to liability, because obviously the number of perpetrators is extensive, and if we build a pyramid, obviously on the first level, on the top, there will be Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova and other top-level government officials, and if we move downwards, there is a lot of military involved who were physically deporting the children to Russian Federation. But if international, well, talking about the International Criminal Court, they review the liability of top-level government officials. Thank you, sir. Let's proceed to the questions on the floor. Victoria Shevchenko, Ukrinform. Sir, do you have any information about the number of Ukrainian children who were illegally adopted in the territory of Russian Federation? Well, we may only say about certain numbers of children that we may be aware of from the open sources, but again, I have to say it's an onerous task, just like calculating the total number of children deported. But again, in Russian Federation, there is such an orphan children bank, and about a year ago, they added the occupied territories of Ukraine to that bank. And honestly, I was trying to keep track of this portal until the very last moment, and those regions, even no matter they were added, the children from those regions were not added to the bank. However, it would simplify our work. We could at least approximately calculate the number of added children. So, in fact, if they are added there, they, as a consequence, are being adopted or being handed over to foster families. So, again, unfortunately, I cannot give you the exact number of the children who were adopted. We have more questions. Yulia Zubchenko, Espresso, can you please tell us whether your document will help us to bring the Ukrainian children back to Ukraine? Well, first of all, this document, will not harm this process. The children keep coming back in small groups. We know that Save Ukraine Foundation of Mykola Komarovskyi, the former Commissioner for Human Rights of Ukraine. So if you enter their official website, you may see that after the arrest warrant was issued, and I want to emphasize that after it was issued in name of Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova, in the information space of Russian Federation, there were positive moves that they started saying like we did nothing bad, and certain processes have started to try to bring Ukrainian children back, at least in small groups. But I have to digress a little bit, because if we talk about the children who are being brought back for the time being, they can conditionally be divided into two groups. First, the children who have parents or relatives, and another group are the children who were deported from the occupied territories. I mean, the territories that were occupied for a long time, like Donetsk and Luhansk regions. So if we check out Save Ukraine portal, we see that those children who are being brought back are the children from the second group. I mean, those who were deported after the occupation of certain regions of Ukraine. Many children were transported to the recreation camps in Russia, and they didn't want to bring them back, but we make it bringing them back. And another group are the children who were deported from the foster homes of Donetsk and Luhansk region. And there are many issues arising in terms of return of those children. And I can refer one of the interviews by Maria Lvova-Belova, who was given an interview to Vice News, where she stated in a bold manner that, like, all right, there are children for whom we say let their parents come and take them back. But if we talk about Donetsk and Luhansk region, it's not Ukraine, it's Russian Federation, and all the decisions are at the discretion of the administration of Donetsk and Luhansk People Republics. So they say it's a territory of Russia, and it's only a matter of formality to extend the citizenship for them, to bring them to the Russian territory, and to have them adopted by foster families. So about those children, the problem will be still there, because it's the position of their political government. And talking about other children, I think that it may have some positive aspect, because we see that after the issuance of the arrest warrant, they started moving to the opposite direction, the direction of return of Ukrainian children, even in small groups. But no matter what happens, we see that there is a crime of genocide going on, crime against humanity, and our main goal is to have all of the children brought back. So again, it's very important to have the perpetrators brought to liability, but the key thing is to return the Ukrainian children back home, to bring them back to Ukraine. So that's the main goal that should be achieved. Thank you very much, Mr. Mykola. Thank you for this information, for the great job you're doing in this area. It's very important for all of us. Let me remind you Joining us was Mykola Komarovskyi, the lawyer of the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group.